everybody rise for the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call this meeting to order. We're meeting today to talk about a Mr. Sheldon who wants to run for town council in Worcester. And there's a formal objection, which I will read to you right now. Members of the Worcester Board of Canvassers, I'm writing on behalf of the Worcester Democratic Town Committee to lodge a formal objection to the eligibility of James J. Sheldon, candidate for Worcester Town Council for the 2012 election season, including but not limited to the reasons indicated below. Although Mr. Sheldon is registered to vote in Worcester, he does not live in the town of Worcester, and in fact does not even live in the state of Rhode Island. While the Board of Elections has previously ruled that an individual living on the border of a town may vote in an election in either town, we do not believe that they have as yet ruled on whether such an individual may be a candidate in an election. It is our belief that there should be a higher standard for a town council candidate than there is for simply casting one's ballot in an election. It is clearly shown on maps obtained from the Killenly Town Hall, see, attached, I have it here, that Mr. Sheldon's house stands entirely within the state of Connecticut. When Mr. Sheldon sleeps each night, he sleeps in Connecticut. When he answers his telephone, it is answered in Connecticut. When he opens his mail, although in possession of a Rhode Island mailing address, he opens his mail in Connecticut. And taxes paid on his house are paid entirely to the town of Killenly, Connecticut. In addition, Mr. Sheldon's truck bears Connecticut license plates. We believe as well that Mr. Sheldon pays his income tax as a Connecticut resident. We do not believe that someone who lives in Connecticut should be allowed to run for office in Rhode Island, to control the operations of the town of Worcester, and to raise taxes on the true residents of Worcester, taxes which essentially have no effect on him. We ask that the Board of Canvassers find Mr. Sheldon ineligible to run for office until such time as the Rhode Island Board of Elections formally addresses the issue of the eligibility of a candidate who does not even live in the state of Rhode Island. Thank you, Lynn Estrada, Secretary for the Democratic Town Committee. For the purposes of this hearing, no one will be able to speak unless we ask them a question. We will be talking to Mr. Sheldon because that's the only fair way to do it. Mr. Sheldon, could you step forward and be sworn in, please? Carol, could you swear Mr. Sheldon, please?
Oh, I don't even know how to do that. Does anyone, go right ahead, anyone who has done that before.
I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
So help me God.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. As you can see, we don't run a lot of these. I don't even have gas. But anyway, Mr. Sheldon, Mr. DePaul has a question.
I have two questions.
Excuse me, I wonder if I might tell the board something.
Excuse me?
I wonder if I might tell the board something first.
What?
Under this title. I'll read it.
Yes, I understand that here.
You understand that I've started the procedure to file a criminal complaint or a misdemeanor complaint against these people?
That's your privilege, sir.
I just want to
That
counsel.
is your privilege.
Can I see this?
That's one of the reasons we're having an early meeting today. So you can go down and appeal it if you don't like what we have done here. We could have had later one major run down there, you know. but-
Well, hopefully the hearings to find out what you're going to do.
Mhm. excuse me, today it's making my nose run. I don't know why.
Okay, for my questions?
Yes.
Mr. Sheldon, first of all, thank you for getting this paperwork and information to us on such a short notice. We've been dealing with the Board of Elections. They've guided us through this process. We know that it was very short notice for you to come up with it, and we appreciate it. Thank you. I have two quick questions. First of all, I want to apologize. We did go through your packet. After we went through your packet, we did ask for the information after we went through your packet. When we turned it over, we noticed that you asked that the packet not be opened until the hearing. We apologize, it was an honest mistake, but we also believe that that was the reason for asking you to get it to us so that we could review it in private. It was confidential, and we needed this information to conduct this hearing and ask you questions and do our homework. So, to be honest with you, that's what happened. We did open the packet. 2 voting canvases with the clerks. She witnessed it, and that was it. I don't know if Pat has opened it yet, but 2 voting canvases did. Okay? So, one of my 2 questions is your driver's license. I noticed that you do have a Rhode Island driver's license.
Yes, I
Do you also hold a Connecticut driver's license?
No, that would be against the law.
Okay, have you ever held a Connecticut driver's
Never.
license? Okay, and my second question is your passport, the agency of your passport is slated as Connecticut. Can you explain that? Is that because there's an agency in Killingly that you went to get your
I just
passport in,
I
or is that where you?
was in Killingly one day, we were going on a cruise, we needed passports. Stop by the Killingly post office,
So
pick it
that's
up,
supposed, is that supposed to?
just happened down the way somewhere.
That's all I have for questions. I do want to,
You'll notice that in the passport, it says residence or on.
yeah. Okay, those are the only 2 questions I have. I do want to, I hope we have discussion before any vote commences. Okay, and that's it for questions that I have.
Okay. Mr. Sheldon, I believe in Connecticut, it's required that you have a Connecticut license to register a vehicle in Connecticut. Do you have any vehicles registered in Connecticut?
2?
To, under your license,
Yes?
a Connecticut license?
No?
In other words, they let you do it under a Rhode Island license?
Yes?
Okay. You pay most of your taxes to the town of Killingly, a large majority of it to the town of Killingly.
Yes.
Why?
The value of the property is obviously in the house.
Well, my question is simply this. Do you do it out of the goodness of your heart, or do you do it because your house is in Killingly?
I do it because the state agency in Connecticut sends me a bill. I'm required to pay.
And they send you an agency or a bill for what in particular?
Well, for the real estate. It's a
For the real estate. So the real estate is out where you live. That's the piece of property that you live on.
Truthfully, when I first bought the house, there was an open building permit on the house issued by the town of Boston. Truthfully?
That's not the way it is right now.
Well, that may be, but right now, there isn't anybody here or anywhere, any agency that I've been able to determine that can tell me where that border is.
We have maps. I believe this would be from Killingly, but this is the state line near your house.
I'm saying. I can believe it.
Okay, so your house is in Connecticut,
My taxes just.
and it's taxed in Connecticut.
Yes.
And the piece of property that you have in Foster, small pieces, like, I don't know how much it would be, you're paying $52 a year for it,
Okay.
okay? And you're getting, police, fire, rescue with that,
From
$52. Huh?
From where?
From Foster.
Yes.
And you're getting Further, you're getting trash pickup
Yes,
from Town of Forster,
yes.
okay? Ergo, all the people in the Town of Forster are subsidizing your police, fire, rescue,
I kind
and
of
your
object to
garbage
that word.
pickup.
Kind of object to that word. We're here to determine whether they're subsidizing me or not.
Are they paying their full taxes?
I'm paying my full taxes for the property I have in Foster.
The problem is, $52 will not cover it.
$52 doesn't cover the resident of anybody that rents a house,
True.
and they're still residents.
But the problem is their landlord does.
But the amount of the money doesn't cover that.
That's not the problem.
Well, the
Problem,
point
what
is,
I'm
you
trying to
brought,
determine here is,
you brought up the amount, so
no,
it's,
seriously, what I'm trying to determine here is your house in Connecticut, which you pay most of your taxes on?
yes,
Okay,
We've
then
already
you
answered
are a
that
Connecticut resident.
no,
You don't live in your house.
I do.
Okay. You live in your house, it's located in Connecticut, you're paying taxes on that house in Connecticut. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. You
I
are
have a house
entitled
in Maine, I
to
pay
all
taxes
the
on that
privileges.
house too.
You're entitled to all the privileges that a taxpayer gets in Connecticut.
No.
Why?
Why? Because there's no address in Connecticut. There's no physical address in Connecticut. I can't get mail there. They don't have trash pickup. They don't have any other services that they offer. I receive no services from Connecticut.
You have two addresses.
Explain to me what the second address is.
The second address is the one listed in Connecticut.
Which is,
I'll give you that letter, please. You have a 127 Cucumber Hill Road address in Forster. You have a 31 Cucumber Hill Road in Killenly, Connecticut.
and where is that address?
Evidently where you live, because that's where your tax bills go to.
I suggest you call the post office. You'll find out that address doesn't exist. Secondly, the addresses that everybody has nowadays comes through the 911 system. Where does my 911 system go?
Wherever Forster has to go and help you, that's where the 911 must go to.
And is
Not
that
all
one-
the addresses are in
Let me
there.
finish. Is that my decision to make? That's not my decision to make. If I pick up my phone, you're wrong about answering the phone in Connecticut. If I pick up my phone and call somebody, it goes to Foster because I have no choice. The phone service comes from Rhode Island. It's not up to me, and Connecticut won't give me phone service in Rhode Island. Nor will they give, this issue came up many years ago, 2003. We had to go to the Superior Court to get our residency established. Superior Court found in our favor. We're residents of Rhode Island. And this board was made aware of that a year ago.
Why would you be aware of that? You were
Because we use it as a precedent when Mr. McClellan's residency was called into requirement.
Problem was that was Mr. McClellan's here.
Evidence was still presented, ma'am. It was here. This board knew it.
Okay, now you say that you are paying. You're not quite complicated thing.
Tell me about it.
Tell me about it. Okay, I tend, and you have a business here at your home, am I correct?
I'm a licensed general contractor. The address for that is my Rhode
Okay,
Island.
who issues your permits and licenses?
That because where I built the house. The permits come from the property where I'm building the house. The license comes from the state of Rhode Island contractor's registration.
You can run a business out of your home without any permit or any changes of, shall we say, status. In other words, not agricultural residential, you are a business enterprise in the town of Foster. That's not given an exception.
I really don't know what question you're asking. Is it-
I'm asking you, if you're running your business out of your home, do you have an exception? Do you have
An exception to do what?
to run a business in an agricultural residential zone?
No such exception is required.
It's required in my home,
Well, okay.
and I'm on Route 6.
Are you a general contractor?
I don't have to be a general contractor. Any business run out of your home requires a permit.
That's my permit. That's my license to do business. Are you saying the town of Foster requires me to have a permit?
You're required to have some kind of a zoning exception if you're running a business out of your home. If you're storing the leftovers of it on your home property. This I know because I ran into it.
I run two businesses. One's an LLC, but one's a sole proprietorship. All my equipment is owned by me personally. What are you talking about?
Is it stored on your property?
My equipment, yes, it is. It
Do you
belongs to
do
me
any of your
personally.
work on your property?
No. I do it where I'm sent to go to do the job.
Okay. And now, let's go on here. This is your insurance company and your car. Where is your house insurance? Do you have it there?
You have a copy of the policy number. The information that you asked for doesn't exist. I just gave you a copy of my house policy number.
It doesn't exist.
You specifically asked me for, let me go right here. Copies of insurance policies for your home indicating where your home is located on your property and where any other buildings are located on your property. It should also indicate what town the insurance company is for your home, which is Foster. And my policies don't list where the house is on home. That document doesn't exist. It just uses, it says it's on the address. Period. 127 Cucumber
I
Hill
think
Road.
everybody
Foster,
here
Rhode
has insurance on their house.
Island. Yes, ma'am.
Homes or whatever. We have home listed, we have all our bonds, all our sheds listed as being insured.
Yes, but they don't
You
say
have a
where on the
paper
property
trail.
they are.
Do you have a piece of paper with that on it?
My insurance goes right to my mortgage, which is GMAC, and by the way, they're in bankruptcy and I can't get documents out on 1 day's notice.
Insurance company, you have no problems, and I have one, for sure. Okay, so let me get this straight. You're paying taxes on a residence in Connecticut. You live in a house in Connecticut. Am I correct? I'm gonna make sure I didn't get this wrong for your benefit, okay? You have insurance on the house in Connecticut. You have two addresses according to the state of Connecticut. Okay. Now, so far, have I missed anything?
Yes, there's a few things.
Like,
You mentioned my automobile registrations. You have
yes,
the
your
copies.
automobile registrations,
Ma'am, you asked me a question on my
Yeah.
answer. You asked me about my automobile registrations. Would you pull a copy of my automobile registration out there, please?
I got it.
Yeah, I know she did mention the two that are registered in Rhode Island.
The two that are registered in Rhode Island, that's fine, we know about those.
Okay, now let's look at the ones on registration in Connecticut. Could you please read the address of my Connecticut registration?
Cucumber Hill Road, Foster, Rhode Island.
Thank you.
You're registered in Connecticut. but
With a Rhode Island
Foster,
address.
I wish I could get away with that, but anyway, go ahead.
Excuse me,
I
get away with what?
I went down there and I misspelled Foster and they wouldn't give me my registration.
Well, excuse me, your comment was that I'm getting away with it. Explain to me what I'm getting away with.
You're registering under a Rhode Island license in another state.
When I went to register vehicles, and I tried to explain to them the situation, the two registries talked to each other, and here's what they told me. On your registration, when you register a vehicle in Rhode Island or in Connecticut, they want to know the principal address where the car is garaged. Period.
That's right.
And when they found out it was a Rhode Island address, of course they questioned it. And they checked with their supervisor, and their supervisor said, this is what we're going to do. And that's what we did. And yes, they accepted my Rhode Island driver's license, and you'll see that on my registration form for Connecticut is my Rhode Island driver's license. So what I'm doing is obeying the law. And my getting away with it shows your predisposition about which way you're going to
It
rule
shows
in this
nothing.
hearing.
It shows nothing.
Maybe not to you.
Excuse me, it shows nothing, and please do not try, don't try to read my mind, okay? Now, your contractor's registration, that is also in Rhode Island?
Yes.
It's very difficult to read, but that's what it is.
Yes.
So you're a contractor in the state of Rhode Island, you have insurance in the state of Rhode Island, contractor insurance in the state of Rhode Island.
Yes.
And you have the, what they call it, you also are bonded. in the state of
General
Rhode Island.
liability.
Yeah.
Yes.
State of Rhode Island, okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Do you have any questions? No. Have any questions?
Can I just skip over all the other documentation I have that says Foster Rhode Island's medical veterans?
Excuse me?
You managed to skip over all the other documentation that you
No, I'm
required me to
looking
bring.
at all. You don't have a whole tremendous amount here that we asked for. All of your stuff that you brought, we brought under the, as long as it had Rhode Island registration on it, you were happy to bring it. The thing is, you have more cars than what you brought us in?
Four.
You have 4 cars.
4 registrations.
4 registrations.
One's a
How many
truck.
registrations did you bring today?
4. 2 in Rhode Island, 2 in Connecticut. Since the one car and one trailer don't actually ever get to the garage, they got registered in Foster.
This is the one you filed, this is the revenue? This is the do not file copy.
That's the copy that I had in my files.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. Do you have any questions from us?
The matter of residency for people in our particular circumstance has been discussed 3 times. In whatever year, 2003, you guys told my wife that she couldn't go to Foster anymore because she was not a resident. The State Board of Elections says you were wrong. That same year, when we went to Superior Court to get a child in school, we had to go to the Department of Education, who agreed with us that considering the totality of the information, that in the opinion of that agency, we were residents. Following that, we went to Superior Court because Foster Gloucester decided to contest it. That happened within 2 days. The Superior Court of Rhode Island decided, given the totality of the information, we were residents. A year ago, this town went after Mr. McClellan for his residency.
I'm sorry, we can't discuss Mr. McClellan's case right now.
This is a
We're
precedent.
discussing you.
This is a precedent.
We are discussing you right now.
This is a precedent.
No, that's not a precedent, because this is
With
your
respect,
hearing.
ma'am, this board decided that somebody who's in exactly the same position
Excuse me.
as I am, and he's my next door neighbor, where the property line has the same effect.
Excuse
This
me.
board decided.
Okay. Mr. McClellan did not discuss it. He's not, we have no paperwork in front of us that would give him a fair hearing. Okay?
You gave him a less than fair hearing.
Now, let's discuss your child. In fact, you said that they decided the fact that your child was a foster child from the state of Rhode Island.
Yes.
A foster child from the state of Rhode Island may go to school in Rhode Island. This I checked myself.
Yes.
Okay. Therefore, they didn't say you were a resident. It said the child was a resident and attached to the town, to the state of Rhode Island. Is that not true?
The child maintained his registry, his residency in Rhode Island with us in the house that you claim you should have.
I made this phone calls.
I'm sure you did.
And the fact is, the child was a resident of the state of Rhode Island, was in your custody, which by the way, I think is a very good thing that you did. And the child was a resident and therefore could go to school in Rhode Island. And if had I been the Captain Payne or whatever, I would have said, what's wrong with that? He's a child from Rhode Island. The situation here is, it did not say you were a resident. It said the child was a resident. I checked on that.
DCYF, who had custody, who had overview of his child's custody, discussed whether or not we had legal residency, because they could not send a child to live out of state unless he maintained residency at our place of residence. They found, DCYF and the Department of Education both found that he maintained his residency at our residence. Not that he solely maintained his residence, but that he maintained his residency at our residence.
That he did have a resident, he was resident. It didn't say you were.
It said that he maintained his residency at our residence.
It's a play on words, sir.
It's splitting hairs that you seem to be more than willing to do.
No, I'm not going to split hairs with you. The situation is this. As I see it, you live in a house in Connecticut, but you pay taxes, the majority of which to the house, to the state of Connecticut. And the town of Foster gets $52 a year from you. Okay? That's what I've come to at this point. Now we have to discuss what we're going to do.
Excuse me, one other thing. Foster Charter says that to be able to run for office, you have to be an elector in the state,
That's right.
in the town.
Well, that's the interesting part of it.
I'm an elector.
You are an elector, yes. But since other things have gone on, we have to let them decide what they're going to do in this case, or any other case, if we decide to
that?
send it that way.
What is that, state board of elections?
Whatever
Are
we
you passing
decide
this
to-
on the state board of elections, or are you making the decision into that?
Whatever we make, a decision we make today, I'm sure they will be aware of it, and they will hear from it, from you or whoever. Whatever it is, I have to call them after anyway.
I was under the impression that your opening statement that you had already talked to the board of electors about this.
Oh, we have, but we also have to set up the rules by the board of elections.
So they are aware.
Excuse me.
You just said,
Excuse me, I have a set of rules I have to live by too. I have to call them and make sure I have.
so I
Thank you,
think they are aware.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. We're going to decide what we're going to do this week. You've been very helpful. And again, I think it's very nice that you brought in a foster child. I really think more people should do it. Is there anyone else who would like to speak before we make a decision on this?
Wait a minute, you're gonna let everyone speak?
No,
This was a-
we just wanted to come. Could we first hear from somebody from the Democratic Town Committee? Is there someone available?
I can speak on behalf.
Yeah, I will hear from you.
Thank you everyone for being here. Canvassers, the town clerk, interested members of the public. First, I want to make clear the objection to Mr. Sheldon's candidacy was brought forward by the Foster Democratic Town Committee. When you read the letter, you indicated Mrs. Ryder's name.
Well, she's a secretary.
She's not the one who made the complaint. It's the committee that made the complaint. She is the corresponding secretary of the committee, responsible for crafting correspondence and sending it out. That's why her name is there. I was asked to attend today and say a few words if necessary. Again, I'm not the one bringing the complaint. It's on behalf of the committee. I just happen to be the one who was available to appear. First of all, the committee would like to commend Mr. Sheldon for his desire for civic engagement. It's a great challenge and a great responsibility to be a candidate, and more so to be a public official. elected. So we commend him on his intent to declare his candidacy. The only problem is that he declared in the wrong town. He declared in the wrong state. This is a simple case. Where does Mr. Sheldon live? You've been provided with a map obtained from the town of Italy. The map clearly shows Mr. Sheldon's residence here at number 9. It clearly shows a vertical dashed line that indicates the state line. Foster is to the right, Killingly is to the left. Mr. Sheldon, the entirety of his house exists within the town of Killingly, Connecticut. It's not in Foster, it's not in Rhode Island. This is not disputed. He does not live here. Now, if you look further down, actually on the same map, you can see that at the bottom of the map, there is a lot indicated number 7. Lot number 7, very much the same as Mr. Sheldon's. A portion of it is in Connecticut, a portion of it is in Foster. But in lot number 7, the entirety of the house is in Connecticut. That person certainly would be. Lot number 7, the entirety of the house is in Rhode Island. Whoever is a resident on lot number 7, even though they own property in Connecticut, resides in Rhode Island. Mr. Sheldon is the opposite. He owns land in Rhode Island, he resides in Connecticut, undisputed, indisputed himself. I know he lives in Connecticut, you know he lives in Connecticut. The town of Killingly knows he lives in Connecticut, this is their record. Even Mr. Sheldon knows he lives in Connecticut, otherwise why would he register his vehicles in the state of Connecticut? It doesn't make sense to the average person that if I'm a resident of Rhode Island, I'm going to register my vehicles in Connecticut. You have in front of you the property record card of the town of Killingly that lists mailing address, 127 Cucumber Hill Road, Foster, Rhode Island. Site of the house, location of the house, 31 Cucumber Hill Road, Killingly, Connecticut. The house was in Connecticut. He resides in Connecticut. Now, he does have a mailing address, a Foster mailing address. We don't dispute. His mailbox stands in the town of Foster. We don't dispute that. That's due to the ease of postal delivery. That has to do with the postal routes. Your mail is delivered by the postal office. But Montagnanson High School is not located in Old Situate. That's its mailing address. It's located in Boston. It's very clear the difference between a mailing address and an address where you reside. That's very clear. I refer you also to Title 17, Rhode Island Elections Law. The determinant of one's domicile is the person's factual physical presence in the voting district on a regular basis, incorporating an intention to reside for an indefinite period. It's not a display an intention to reside in the state of Rhode Island. In fact, just the opposite. He resides in the state of Connecticut. It's clear. It's not disputed. Further down on the same page, prima facie evidence for determining person's residence for voting purposes. The address from which the voter's motor vehicle is registered. The motor vehicle is registered in Killingly, Connecticut, with a mailing address of 127 Cucumber Hill Road, Foster, Rhode Island, because that's the only way the post office delivers in Connecticut. The post office doesn't decide where you live. The state line decides where you live. It's going to live. Have documentation in front of you from the town of Killingly, again from the tax record book, showing that there are 2 vehicles, a Dodge Durango and a Dodge Dakota, both of which are registered in Killingly, in the town of Connecticut. Mailing address is Foster, but people in Foster don't register their vehicles. Doesn't make sense. You have his registrations as well, prima facie evidence. He has not presented today to this board, to this room, any evidence that disputes the prima facie evidence called for in Title 17 that the location of the registration of the vehicles establishes residence. Now, he's provided you with other other pieces of evidence that say he's a Rhode Island resident, he's a Connecticut resident, he's both, he's one, he's the other. He has not been able to dispute prima facie evidence that vehicles are registered in Connecticut. That's what Title 17 calls it. Let's say for a minute that I want to be known as a dog. I've decided a dog. I can waddle and I can quack. I can dye my hair white to look like feathers. I can become a card-carrying man or a member of Ducks Unlimited. In fact, I can probably even in an election year get my congressman to introduce legislation to say in the U.S. Census, if I want to be counted as a duck, I'm a duck. But that's irrelevant. But there is a clear line between what a human is and what a duck is. It doesn't matter what I hold myself out as and say, I want to be a duck, that doesn't matter. There is a clear line differentiating those things. There is also a clear line differentiating people who live in Rhode Island and people who live in Connecticut. Whatever law, whatever ruling may be passed to obfuscate and obscure that line doesn't make any sense. The line is the line. You can say what you want, but the line is the line. I'll never be a duck. Rhode Island Board of Elections does, in their ruling, use the word address. What address? And I've already basically addressed the word address as being a postal address, a mailing address. That's really not valid in rural routes where a rural post office is delivering mail for establishing residence. The state line has to be the government friendly, the post office. But the little bit of ambiguity in this particular ruling does make some sense. I mean, if it were entirely clear that we no need for lawyers, there'd be no need for judges, there'd be no need for adjudicating panels like this or panel of the Board of Elections, these things exist so that we can interpret the law. What does the law mean? What does the ruling or the regulation mean? So the state line does that, oh, so very clearly. The idiosyncrasies of the postal rule have no bearing. So this wiggle room does have a little bit of merit. It has a merit in the case of a college student who is a resident of Rhode Island but actually spends 10 months a year at a college in Tennessee or California. They're still a resident of Rhode Island. They're just living there. A military personnel who may be serving in Iraq or Afghanistan, they're from Rhode Island, but you know they haven't been here for 2.5 years. But this is their residence. Their family is still in Rhode Island. They're just serving overseas. In the case of retirees that maybe spend half of the year down in Florida to avoid the weather and half of the year back here, all of those people maintain their residence in the state of Rhode Island. They can do so under the wiggle room of this particular wording. And that's valid. What's different between all of those groups of people and Mr. Sheldon is that those groups of people have a residence in Rhode Island that they will return to. Their permanent residence exists within the borders of the state of Rhode Island. And maybe they're outside of the state for a little while, but it's a temporary thing. And with Mr. Sheldon, he's established a permanent home. He's not coming back to Rhode Island. He's not going back and forth because of college, because of he's been sent overseas. He has established a permanent residence in the state. All those other people are transient. And that's a key point. Now, perhaps he didn't realize, he says he didn't realize it. I don't want to impugn him at all. This is purely a case of here versus there. I don't doubt his intentions are perhaps the best, but the state line is the state line. It's permanent residence. It's not a right. He's left the state permanent. So if the ruling were to be interpreted to allow those who live in other states to run for office in Rhode Island, would that not be an injustice? Does that make any sense at all? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. And we, in the United States, and in Rhode Island in particular, have a long history of opposing injustice. I don't think that this ruling should be interpreted to allow his residency to be in Rhode Island. It wasn't written that way, I don't believe it was intended that way. And if it was, for some obscure reason, then it's clearly an injustice, and we don't stand for those. We don't stand and say, let's just allow that to happen. I mean, you think about the entire American Revolution was based upon injustices. They put a tax on tea in 1775, and Samuel Adams and his group, they didn't pay the tax. They dumped the tea in the harbor. Everyone's familiar with the Tea Party. We're all familiar with the Tea Party. In Rhode Island here, we burnt the gas fee. We burnt the gas fee as opposed to paying the tax. Now, what do we call those people that stand up against unjust rules, unjust application of law? We call those people, we call them heroes. That's what we call them. I mean, Theodore Foster, after whom this town was named, was involved in the burning of the gas fee, involved in standing up against an unjust interpretation or an unjust regulation. He burned the gas fee. What did we do? We made him first senator of the state of Rhode Island. We named the town after him. That's what we do. When it's just, it's just. When it's not, it's not. When it's a state line, you're on the left, you're on the right. It happens everywhere. I can go on and on. Rosa Parks sat on the front of the bus. Rules say she couldn't do that, but she did. We think about the man who stood in front of the tank at Tiananmen Square. He said, you know, this rule is not just. Might have been put forward by the government, but he's going to face off against that tank, alone, if he needs to, at great peril to himself, or herself, if they need to. The application cannot be unjust. The state law is clear. So, the Democratic Town Committee would ask that you find that this wiggle room, this ambiguity, as far as residents in this statute, does not apply to Mr. Sheldon. He is a permanent resident of the state of Connecticut with prima facie evidence per statute to determine that. He does not qualify for placement on the ballot. We ask that you stand up for what is right. Sustain the Democratic Town Committee's objection and rule that he does not qualify for placement on the ballot. We expect nothing less. Thank you. Madam Chair.
One person may speak to Mr. Sheldon.
Okay.
I don't hand up for you.
Okay, sorry.
Heidi Rogers, Cucumber Hill Road. All of the facts that Mr. Lewis just brought out were obviously presented in the Superior Court, and it was a favorable decision for Mr. Sheldon. I think it's pretty clear. There's no ambiguity, no wiggle room. If you read Section 1302 of the Charter, qualifications, clearly states, all elected officials shall be qualified electors of the town. So my question to you is, does Mr. Sheldon's name appear on your voter list? Has he been allowed to vote in the town of Foster?
Yeah.
Then your decision's pretty easy. That's all I have to say.
I have a Superior Court ruling for you.
There'll be talking, thank you. We appreciate your interest. We're going to get together for a moment here and make our decision. Let's call for a vote.
Make a motion, someone's gonna make a motion.
Make a motion.
I'm not making it.
Huh?
I want discussion.
Anyway, I make a motion that we, there's so much to put in this, I'm going to try to, that we go along with the, what's the Democrats' objection, and state that Mr. Sheldon is not qualified to run for the town council. Is there a second for that? You want a second? Yeah. Do we have a discussion?
Can I ask you? Yeah. We spent a lot of time, I took this case very seriously because I can see both sides. It's a hot topic. And I see both sides of it. And I went through Mr. Shelton's packet. But more importantly, I went through the Rhode Island election laws, the Secretary of State's Rhode Island election laws. And I can't help but keep coming back to it. Statute 17.1.3.1, I'm sorry, 17-1.3.1, residence for voting purposes. And my good friend, Mr. Lewis, is right. The following shall be considered prima facie evidence of a person's residence for voting purposes. But I can't help but disagree with Mr. Lewis because I feel as though he has provided all the information that this statute asks. It asks us to ask for him to furnish his registry of motor vehicles for the voter operator's license. He did. 2 were in Connecticut, 2 were in Rhode Island. It asked that we ask the address from which the voter filed his last federal income tax return. It was the state of Rhode Island. His state income tax, it was the state of Rhode Island. His 1040 easy form, it was the state of Rhode Island. His bank financial information, he furnished his bank statement, his savings statement, his bank account, 127 Cucumber Hill Road, Forster, Rhode Island. His business address, J&L Construction, Forster, Rhode Island. His bank statement concerning his business on J&L Construction, Forster, Rhode Island. His insurance company, his Geico. His 2003 Malibu, Forster, Rhode Island. This next evidence holds the most weight with me, and I look forward to seeing because I was told that this gentleman had a Connecticut license, but he's in fact provided a driver's license for the state of Rhode Island, and he swore an oath that he doesn't hold a Connecticut license. So I find it hard not to follow the rules that the state of Rhode Island has provided for us. 2 of his vehicles are registered in the state of Rhode Island, 2 are registered in Connecticut. But the majority of the information he provided is from Rhode Island. Now, when I asked the Board of Elections, because this law is so ambiguous, I asked them, what weight do we hold? Do we ask, do we take one of these prima facie evidence and say, okay, that's it? Do we take 3? Do we take 4? Does he have to provide all of them to show that he's qualified? And they told me that he has to put out, it's where he puts himself out. What state does he put himself out as in? And from what I can see, it's all Rhode Island. Now, I understand Mr. Lewis's opinion that where is his house? I can't find anywhere in here that it says his house has to be in the state of Rhode Island for him to vote. Unfortunately, there is no ruling on candidates in this book, and the Board of Elections backed me up on that. I wish there was. It would make my job a lot easier. So they told me you have to go back to the voter requirements. You have to be a registered voter to be a candidate in the state of Rhode Island. So we have to look at the voter requirements, which is 17-1.3.1, residence for voting purposes. I called the state of Connecticut. By the way, the Board of Elections said that a voter cannot put himself out in 2 states. Therefore, he cannot vote in 2 states. So I called the state of Connecticut, and I found that Mr. Sheldon does not vote in the state of Connecticut, nor is he on the roster. I know his house is in Connecticut. We all know his house is in Connecticut. It doesn't matter how I feel about Mr. Sheldon or where his house is. This rule says that he can vote in the state of Rhode Island, I believe, my opinion, if he puts himself out in the state of Rhode Island. He's provided his packet. Everything, just about everything except for his passport, says that the addresses are in the state of Rhode Island. I believe he's put himself out as a Rhode Island resident. I have to go by this book, even though I believe his house is in Connecticut. I believe the laws allow him to vote in the state of Rhode Island. That's my...
Further in the discussion, I have to say that Rhode Island does designate residency requirements. It just doesn't do it in your book. It says a person can be considered a resident of the state for tax purposes, right? As long as he lives within and without Rhode Island in a number of days of 183 days. He has to live 183 days or less within the state of Rhode Island. He is then considered a resident. Who may register to vote in Rhode Island is a resident of Rhode Island city or town where you wish to vote. It's been my experience. Another one here is another tax one. It says a resident is a person domiciled in the state of Rhode Island, or although not domiciled here, does not maintain a permanent home in Rhode Island, and is here for a total of more than 183 days of the taxable year. Rhode Island regulations in college, if your child was going to college, you would have to be registered. They would have to be registered, or you would have to be registered as a resident of the town of the state of Rhode Island. You have to, and that would be acquired real or personal property in Rhode Island, have paid municipal and state taxes in Rhode Island, and or have married Rhode Island residents, which I think kind of leans towards yours. The state of Rhode Island is kind of flooded on this, but we can't lose one sight. Whether or not it's right or wrong, he still lives in Connecticut. And under those circumstances, whatever he puts himself out for, I can put myself out for as a Boston, Massachusetts business person and travel up there maybe 2 days a year and make good money. In fact, actually, I did make good money in Newport, but I could not become a town council member in Newport. I could not go on city payroll in Boston. I have a situation where I had a business where I could be anywhere. I can't do it, become a citizen at that time just because I wish it. And I'm not even thinking that perhaps I'm not blaming Mr. Sheldon in this, to be honest, or Mr. McClellan either. I think the state of Rhode Island needs to get this clarified and stop putting us in the middle every time we call them with a problem. Yeah.
I don't believe it's our job to determine Mr. Sheldon's residence. I believe it's our job to determine whether he has voting privileges or not. And to determine whether he has voting privileges, we have to go by statute 17-1-3.1, which says that he can vote in this state if he puts himself out as a resident. Not if he lives in the town, not if his house is physically in the town, but if he puts himself out in the town, in the state. Now, the Board of Canvassers, I spoke to Ms. McCando, the director, he also stated that a Florida resident can do the same thing. They can put themselves out as a Rhode Island resident if they decide to vote in the town, in the state of Rhode Island, or the town of Foster. They want to make it easy for people to vote. They cannot have a resident vote in 2 states. The minute they do that, they're disqualified.
I have no objection to the voting. What I'm saying is, you're asking the town of Worcester and all the people who are paying regular taxes and having them go up quite a bit lately, to take into account a person who does not pay those taxes and put them in the town council to rule on whether you or I have higher taxes. That's the point. The point of the
I
matter is
believe
simply
that would be a campaign issue on the opposing party, and not our job to determine.
well, then I think that perhaps the state of Rhode Island should determine that. And I don't.
We both agree that this is a topic, this law is not clear, they should have a law on
No, it
it.
isn't. And that's the old law, and there's a new one that they put out after the Mr. McClellan situation. And that one is, this one here says, it says quite clearly that we are not allowed to give voting rights to someone from another state. Again, I don't blame these gentlemen, and I don't blame their family, and I'm really, quite frankly, tired of being in the middle. But the fact of the matter is, don't give me one set of rules here and one set of rules here, and expect me to make all our decisions on that. We're getting double digit here, we're getting double shots, okay? He is running for election, that's the difference, okay? That is the definite difference. And I don't care, I'm glad he's voting. The problem is, that's different. It's a different thing. And I don't agree with Mr. Kendall on that, because I said to him right up, I said, look, it takes like one change of word for you to say, run for election. I mean, should I recognize you? Yes.
I just a short statement. You guys brought up some things that weren't discussed, and I'd like to just respond to them.
Okay, but you understand that they also have a chance to respond.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'd like to get through this, so let me get through it, and then we can talk about it. First off, there's a lot of people that say people who live in one district shouldn't be able to vote. You know, what you're saying. I live in a different place, I should be able to run for office here. I'm not, Mr. Lewis here waxing on about patriots and stuff like that. Honestly, he managed to, neglect the biggest and most visible. Hillary Clinton was allowed to run for senator from a city in New York that she had never lived in, ever. So that nonsense goes away. Okay? Secondly, much straight about where my house is on the property and why I pay more taxes to Connecticut and how much I pay. How much I pay in taxes makes no difference. I am a taxpayer in the town of Foster. How much I pay should never have been mentioned here. With all due respect, there are people who pay way up here and people who pay way down here. No mention should be made of what rights one has over the other, because they're all supposed to have equal rights. The fact that I only pay this amount instead of this amount is not legal. You should never mention that.
Excuse me.
Stop, I have to get through this.
All right.
The second thing is, the last thing is, when we went into court in the Superior Court, the issue was exactly what you people are talking about. The issue was very clearly, what ties to the community do you have? What makes you a resident of Foster? That was exactly the issue brought up in Superior Court. The judge at the time, who was Williams, who later became Chief Justice of the Rhode Island Supreme Court, made a note that he was in the same boat. He lived on a piece of land that straddled two towns in southern Rhode Island. I think it was Richmond and some other, Charleston maybe, I don't know. And he took note of the fact that there's a lot of people that have this problem in Rhode Island because per capita, with a small state union, we therefore probably have more people who have that problem than any other state in the union. And he ruled in our favor. The issue that he brought up about whether or not you have ties in the community, me and my wife have ties in this community. My wife is a Hopkins. We want to pretend that she was, let me finish.
No, I'm
Her
just gonna say-
great-great-grandfather signed the Declaration of Independence for Rhode Island, living in Foster. Do we really want to pretend that we don't have ties to this town? That's nonsense. With all due respect, this board should take absolute note of the fact that this is politics. This is pure politics. This is some way to get me off
You
the ballot.
have gone past facts to accusations.
To reality.
No, to accusations. Now, the situation is this, still, okay? The objection is to your residence being in another state. And the objection is to your being able to pass on taxes belonging to other people, and if that's why your taxes were mentioned.
The value of any piece of property, any piece of property,
That's
let me
not the
finish.
point.
Any piece of property in this
Excuse
state,
me.
the value of the property is the
Excuse
frontage
me.
of that property, any access to
Excuse
it.
me. Would you like to respond? Okay.
I just have one thing to say. I believe that the intent of the charter, when it says that a candidate must be an elector of the town, is so that that elector, that potential official of the town, shares the same burdens as the rest of the community. That whatever decisions they make, and let's face it, monetary is one of the biggest, is shared by them. In Mr. Sheldon's case, that doesn't happen. And I do not, and I think that the intent of the charter is that it should be a council of your peers, because they share the same burdens, hardships, resulting taxation as the rest of the community. I don't believe that happens in Mr. Sheldon's case.
Okay, any more discussion up there?
May I please?
Discussion? No, we're sticking with the parties involved. The original was, I made a motion that we vote on the exception without the Democratic account. I'm getting more level up, By the objection.
You voted to hold the objection. and
Yeah, hold the
deny
objection.
Mr. Sheldon.
Okay. All those in favor of holding the objection? All those against? Huh? What is yours? Yes, no. Huh?
Provided all the information, I'm just alternate.
So it's two yes? Who knows when yes? Okay. Motion denied. Meeting adjourned.
We can run.